Hi, I'm Josh. Our new record, Haven, is out, and I'm going to show you some of the guitars I have on tour. So there have been certain milestone moments in my life where something really amazing has happened, and I have bought a guitar to sort of commemorate that. I have one for my Grammy nomination, I have one for the year I got married, and I have one for the year that my kid was born. So I'm going to show you that first, because I've only had it for so long. So this is a 1964 original SG, and she is a babe! It's a custom, so it's got the 3 pickups rather than the 2. When SG started, they were originally called, they actually just took over the name of Les Paul in, I believe, 61. You can let me know in the comments, I might be off by a year. But 61 and 62, they were called Les Pauls, and then around 63, it switched to being called the SG. And then this one is 64, and the difference there is also 61, 62, 63 are going to be that sort of wider 50s profile neck. And then 64 through around 66, there's a medium neck, and then after that, there's the tiny neck. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but my hands are massive. So playing guitars from like 67, 68 on are a little bit difficult for me when I'm playing down here because the width of the nut. So this was the right shape for me. You can tell she's had some repairs. So she's been beat up a bit. She's been beat up a bit. But I love playing this guitar every night, and it always sort of feels like there's family with me, and that's a really important thing. The other interesting thing with when Gibson does, at least from this era, when they did the 3 pickup guitars, but they only have the 3-way switch, you're like, well, how do you get all the positions? So the way they originally were wired, it was bridge on its own, and then in the middle, bridge and middle, and sometimes those pickups are in phase and sometimes they're out of phase. It was not a super consistent time for wiring. And then the last one is neck. So my good buddy who is a luthier and techs all of my guitars in Vancouver, whose name is Paul Iverson, he suggested, so we did have to flip the phase on the middle one because she was out. And what Paul did is he changed the wiring so that this functions like a normal Les Paul would function. This only controls the front and back pickups, and then the middle pickup is on its own dedicated volume knob. So you can just move that in and out if you want, as you see fit. It sounds really awesome, not surprisingly. And when you do have these two engaged, it sort of sounds like the fattest Strat you've ever heard. It's awesome. Matt and I both run a show A and a show B. So for show A, this is the top of the show. So this is the first several songs. So I use this because this is like the classic PAF vibe. I use this for all of the songs that have like the heaviest guitar tones. So I start the show with it and I actually finish with it. It bookends the show. And also I'll just tell you, I'm always like extra careful with this one because the SGs from this era are there was still a little more R&D that had to happen, so like the necks are pretty fragile, so we have to be very careful with this one. So when I was designing all the sounds for the show, there's basically, I once heard Mike Campbell say that to make a record, you just need a good Gibson and a good Fender. And well, I love Mike Campbell, and I do kind of agree. I must also just respectfully add more that you need a good humbucker, a good single coil, and for me, also a good halfway, like a Gretsch Filtertron. So this show is designed for, there's the humbucker section, there's sort of the Filtertron-y section, and there's the single coil section. So show A and show B. So for show B, the guitar that is the opposite of the SG, it's not actually a humbucker, it's a little more of a P90 vibe, but that's kind of in that family. So this is the Cower. So I have known Doug Cower for a few years. This is the second Cower guitar that I have. I'm a huge fan of Cower guitars. They make great stuff. And the really exciting thing about buying a boutique guitar versus one of like the big 3, or I guess now big 4 if you include PRS these days, which they probably deserve to be. The cool thing with buying a guitar from a smaller luthier or a boutique company is they're going to be made to order. So you can talk to that person and be like, I need a guitar that does this, I need it to do this, I need it to do this. And they'll be happy to oblige. And Doug is a lovely man, and so he made this for me. So he debuted this guitar. Obviously, it's like a wacky Explorer-ish guitar. But also with the Firebird vibe up here. I was going to the NAMM show in LA, and he debuted this guitar just a couple of days before NAMM started. So I saw him when he had only just brought this out, and I kind of liked the idea that I was going to buy one from him because I also bought the very first Super Chief that he ever made. That's my other Kawa guitar. So I asked him, I was like, could you do like a sunburst that's also a sparkle? Could you do like a sparkle sunburst? And they're like, no problem. And then the wiring in here is very custom and weird to me. So there's the Duesenberg trem, which is one of my favorite all-time trems. I know there's a lot of extra knobs on here, right? So the pickups are LØLØ, which is actually Julian Lage's signature pickups. And I know Julian's an amazing jazz player, so why am I doing that in this? Well, what they are is they're sort of a cross between a P90 and a Gretsch-style Dynasonic. So they're sort of like a brighter P90. So I can use this with the amp set the same as I would for like a PAF humbucker, and it will be complementary to that amp sound. So the wiring on here is, first of all, any custom guitar that I have always has a kill switch, because I'm the lead singer. There's lots of times I just need to go straight to hard mute. I wish all guitars should just come with a mute switch, guys. So then we've got, so what's this deal? What's this about? So this was also a Paul Iverson suggestion. So just the same as on the SG, this only controls the front and back. And then this guy here is the controls for the middle pickup. So this way is off, this way means the pickup is always on, and this way means the pickup is soloed. So that's a really quick, easy way to switch. And then what the hell is this extra one? So this switches between parallel and in series. So you really have every tone possible out of this guitar. So this is the B show that doubles for the SG position. So she bookends the show every other day. Okay, I always play 10 to 52. I've always played 10 to 52. I like the D'Addario ones, which is what we are using. This one starts the show in drop D and then finishes the show in standard. What a babe! This is the Gretsch White Penguin. This one is a double cut. There are also single cut versions. I bought it in approximately 2011. It's not vintage. It is one of the master built, which is like Gretsch's custom shop master built. This is a Steven Stern one. I love this guitar so much, but I have one single gripe with Gretsch guitars, especially with this body. So Gretsch aficionados will all know that Gretsch, rather than having a tone knob, they have a fixed position tone guy like that, tone toggle. And I don't know about you guys who are Gretsch players, but for me, I only use the one toggle position. I'm not a fan of the other two positions. And it just so happens, like, I have a vintage 6120 and that one is a bigger body, so it's not in the way. But on this guitar specifically, this is where it was originally put. And like, you're definitely gonna hit that during the show. I would hit it every single song. So we just plopped that out. Other than that, the guitar is still stock. It's TV Jones Filtertrons. The other thing with using Gretsch guitars that can be a little bit challenging is they output at a very lower volume than basically every other guitar. So usually a humbucker is like, a classic PAF is like around 8, and Filtertrons I think are usually around more like 4.5. So you have to have your amp set completely differently. You have to drive the amp way harder using these, but that's also the secret of why they have that sizzly top end. So in this show, I've designed like a third of the show to be like, this is the Gretsch tone part. So all the amp sounds that I'm using there are specifically made for this guitar. Okay, this is the other B guitar, which is not a Gretsch tone, but it is also that sort of halfway between humbucker and single coil type vibe. So this is Diego Villa. And I bought this directly from him at that same NAMM show where Doug Cower showed me that. I also met Diego. He's a lovely guy from Spain, and he makes these gorgeous guitars. I love them because they kind of have that, to me, they sort of look like that retro 60s Jetson era future. So he first sold me because it also has the Duesenberg trem, as you're gonna see a trend with Duesenberg trems. So I also really like that Diego makes his own pickups. So these are his version of mini humbuckers. Don't confuse mini humbuckers with Firebird pickups. They are not the same thing, although they're just the same size, but they're a totally different vibe. So back in like the late 50s and the early 60s, before Epiphone was the student models that we know them as today, at that time, they were their own awesome company, and they were the inventors of the original mini humbucker that they called New York pickups. So this is Diego's version of that, and the reason why I can use that, as I was saying, like you have to set your amps differently for a Gretsch tone. The reason I can use that for this is only slightly hotter than the Gretsch output. I think this is outputting around 5.5 to 6. So yes, it's a little bit gainier than the White Penguin, but they can do the same job. I love this guitar so much. It's a slightly chunkier neck profile, which for me is fine, because again, I have gigantor hands. Now we're to the single coil portion of the show. Oh, I love this guitar. So this is my Ricky 330. The first 330 I ever had was a 60s one that was a 12 string, and I had to get rid of it actually because Rickies, especially 60 Rickies, are a really narrow neck, and we know this trend of giant hands, and it was a 12 string, and the narrow necked ones, they just put an extra 6 strings on there and they're the same nut width. So I couldn't play it. I couldn't play it. So I got rid of that one and I got a more modern 12 string one and the 6 string one. So I've done some mods to this. So Rickies have 2 styles of single coils that are both equally iconic in my opinion. There's the toasters and there's also the high gains. So this originally came with high gains in it, but I wanted this to be sort of my like Pete Townsend machine. So this, I swapped in the Ricky toasters, and the other thing I did is Rickies generally have a blend knob here, but it's a slightly superfluous knob because it does the same thing as the volume knob on the neck pickup. You guys can let me know in the I know they say it's a blend, but we looked at the wiring and it wasn't doing anything that this wasn't doing. So instead what I did is, the other thing with the 60s Rick tone is there's the jangle. Everyone talks about like the Beatlesy jangle, which is actually just a high pass filter that they had only built into the bridge pickups. High pass is a confusing name. What it actually means is only the high shall pass. So it's a low cut would be a better name for that. Anyway, they had that built into them back in the day. And then around, I don't know the specific year, but approximately like the late 70s, definitely by the early 80s, they took that out because that style wasn't in fashion at the time. So what I did on this is, rather than that blend knob, I have that high pass here where you can toggle it off or on. So you kind of have modern mode, classic mode. And Rickies were a big tone that I used on the current record, so I had to have one on tour with me. Okay, my show B, the other single coil. This is a 1965 Strat. It is all original except for one thing, which is it does have the 5-way pickup toggle, because Strats from that time didn't have that yet. They also only came around in like 79 or 80. Other than that, she is stock, and this is the other single coil tone that I use in show B. You know, I always shied away from Strats, and I've actually owned this for a long time, and at some point I just accepted that the reason they're so common is because they're fucking awesome. So I also I don't know, whoever owned this before me, this is a very odd place to have wear and tear, but that's how she came. This guitar is in both show A and show B because no other guitar sounds like this guitar. Dr. Brian May of Queen built that guitar that he plays, the famous Red Special. As far as I know, he really only built the one, I think. And there are several other boutique makers out there today who build faithful copies of it because Dr. May never patented that design. There's one company called Ferrari. There's one out of Australia, a guy named Andrew Guyton, which I think builds a lot of his backups. And I found this this lovely company called Carpentieri out of Sicily, Italy. As far as I know, it is just one guy named Corrado. So I ordered this guitar from him, and it's not an exactly faithful replica. There's a couple differences. One is that the neck, my neck, I ordered 3 centimeters smaller, which is crazy because if you feel this neck, it's still massive. Go ahead. It's like a tree. I'm 6'2", so I have a, Brian May must be massive. He must be a very tall man. So the whole vibe with this guitar is it's all wired in series, which means like if you have this pickup on, and then you put this pickup on with it, now we're at twice the volume, and the mid-range, as opposed to on a Strat, where the mid-range gets scooped when you go to the 2 positions, which would be in parallel. When you do it in series, the mid-range goes whoa! So it's this massive sound, and every pickup has its own dedicated off and on, and then its own phase flip. No other guitar sounds like this guitar, so, and ironically, at first I thought the neck felt strange, and now that I'm used to it, it might be my favorite guitar to play because it's got the wider nut and it's just very comfy with my weird giant hands. All right, our new record Haven is out now. Thanks for watching, guys. Go practice.